Amazon employees are caught faking their AI usage to hit corporate quotas. U.S. inflation spikes to its highest level since 2023, and Sam Altman takes the stand to defend his empire in federal court. Welcome to today's Daily Rundown. I am your host, Anna. This podcast is researched and produced by Etienne Noumen, senior software engineer from University Laval, based in Calgary, Alberta. Today, we perform a forensic autopsy on the toxicity of token maxing this Wednesday, May 13th, 2026. The artificial intelligence industry is creating a severe disconnect between corporate metrics and actual productivity. Inside Amazon, employees are actively gaming internal AI tools, creating fake automated tasks just to hit a management quota, demanding 80% weekly adoption. Across the industry, a toxic culture of token maxing is emerging, with developers burning through billions of AI tokens just to inflate their usage scoreboards. But while the software side burns tokens, the physical economy is stalling. Driven by a 17.9% surge in energy costs, U.S. inflation has jumped to 3.8%. And the massive hardware demands of AI data centers have caused DDR5 memory prices to skyrocket, collapsing the global consumer motherboard market by nearly 30%. Before we dive into the data, a brief strategic request. The algorithms governing the app you are listening on right now dictate what intelligence reaches your feed. To ensure you never miss our most critical forensic autopsies, please hit follow or subscribe to the DJAMGAMIND channel on Apple Podcasts to always listen completely ads-free. It takes just 1 second, but it is the most effective way to help us scale this independent research. Today's episode is brought to you by Area. When corporations are forcing fake AI productivity quotas onto their staff, your organization needs flawless technical intelligence. A special thank you to Area for sponsoring today's forensic briefing. Let's unravel the day.
Before we begin today's briefing, a note for the brands listening. If you want to reach the true architects of the AI revolution, the technical leaders actually building the stack, not just the tourists, DJAMGAMIND offers select premium partnership opportunities. Let us position your product directly in front of the ultimate technical buyer. Visit jamgamind.com/partners.
Right now, somewhere in an Amazon office, a developer is writing a script to force an AI to just read their inbox over and over again.
Which is completely pointless.
Right. The AI isn't doing anything useful at all, but because of that script, your grocery bill just went up.
Yeah, it really did.
Welcome to today's deep dive. It is May 13th, 2026, and today, we're basically stepping into the role of forensic business strategists. We are performing a full autopsy on the news cycle, and the central theme we just keep hitting today is this massive slow-motion collision.
It's the collision between the artificial, almost obsessive pressure tech companies are putting on AI usage and the incredibly harsh physical reality of our hardware and the global macroeconomy. I mean, you can write infinite lines of code, but you cannot escape physics.
That is the perfect way to frame it, because the journey we have for you today is just wild. We are going to look at how these incredibly toxic corporate AI quotas are driving a massive squeeze on physical hardware.
Yeah.
We'll explore the mechanics of why your company's obsession with AI tokens is literally driving up national inflation.
Right, the energy costs.
Exactly. And finally, we'll look at how this all culminates in a federal courtroom battle over who actually controls the future of compute. So, to understand the strain on the physical world, I think we have to start with the artificial pressure inside the tech world.
Which almost always begins with a metric. And the most glaring example today comes from Amazon. According to the Financial Times, Amazon management has set this internal mandate. They basically mandate that over 80% of their developers use AI on a weekly basis.
Over 80%.
Yeah. And to enforce this, they haven't just asked nicely. They've created a public staff ranking scoreboard to track model and token usage.
Okay, before we get into the psychology of a public scoreboard, which is a whole other thing, let's just clarify what we mean by token usage for anyone who isn't, living in the developer trenches right now.
Good idea.
So a token is basically the fundamental unit of compute for an AI. Think of it like a syllable of a word. Every time the AI reads a syllable or generates a syllable, it burns a token. And burning a token requires actual physical electricity in a server somewhere.
Exactly. So Amazon wants to see its employees burning a massive amount of tokens to prove they are, embracing the future. But This is an incredibly blunt instrument for measuring productivity.
Yeah.
It just assumes that more AI usage automatically equals better work.
It totally reminds me of that apocryphal story about the Soviet nail factory.
Oh, right, yeah.
The state planners decided they were going to measure the factory's output strictly by weight. They told the manager, we need 10 tons of output this month. So to hit their quota easily without having to manufacture thousands of tiny, intricate nails, the factory just manufactured one giant 10-ton nail.
Just a massive piece of metal.
Exactly. It was completely useless for building anything, but it hit the metric perfectly. Management got what they measured.
And that is precisely what is happening at Amazon right now, but with digital compute. Employees are gaming an internal tool called MeshClaw. Now, to understand why this is so heavy on the servers, you have to understand that MeshClaw is an agentic tool.
Meaning it does things on its own.
Right. It doesn't just sit there waiting for a chat prompt. It is an autonomous agent. You give it a goal, and it can deploy code, sort emails, operate across company software, and run constant background loops to check its own work.
And because it's running those background loops, checking and rechecking, the token usage just skyrockets exponentially compared to, just asking a chatbot to write a polite email.
Precisely. Because employees are terrified of falling to the bottom of this public scoreboard, they're setting MeshClaw to do completely unnecessary hyper-agentic tasks.
Wow.
They're manufacturing busy work just to burn tokens. It highlights the deep cynicism of this entire token maxing push. I mean, a token counter can definitively prove that a server was pinged.
Sure.
But it does absolutely nothing to prove that the work got better or faster.
Yeah.
If you reward raw usage instead of business outcomes, your employees will optimize for the scoreboard, not the product.
When employees are forced to game the system just to appear AI productive, it proves that throwing raw compute at your workforce is a massive liability. Deploying AI requires true management infrastructure. We want to thank our sponsor, AIRAA, for making today's briefing possible. AIRAA provides the enterprise-grade AI management platform that organizations need to turn raw AI potential into measurable, secure workflow automation. You can find their link in the show notes.
So contrasting that corporate forced usage at Amazon with people who are burning tokens voluntarily is where things get really fascinating. Because out in the wild, you have independent developers exhibiting what some in the industry are actually calling AI psychosis.
I am obsessed with that term, AI psychosis.
It's very fitting.
The poster child for this has to be developer Sigrid Jin. Jin was just on stage at the Web Summit in Vancouver, proudly bragging that he voluntarily burned 50 billion tokens in a single year.
50 billion. Let's just ground that number for a second. If a typical heavy user interacts with an AI every single day, asking it to summarize articles or, draft code, they might burn a few million tokens a year.
A few million, okay.
Right. So to hit 50 billion, Jin had to be running massive, sustained, automated agentic loops. He is essentially running a fleet of digital workers 200/7.
And his advice to the audience was wild. He told them they need to spend as much on AI tokens as they do on their rent.
Literally their rent.
Yeah. He argued that the only way to genuinely understand the frontier of this technology is to pay for the $200 a month tier plans that offer higher intelligence APIs rather than the standard $20 subscriptions.
And, well, for Jin, the return on investment was objectively massive. Back in March, Anthropic accidentally leaked parts of the source code for their Claude model.
Right, the big leak.
Yeah, and before the copyright strikes could take it down, Jin used his massive AI token budget to have agentic models rapidly translate and recreate that entire leaked codebase into Python. He called it Claw code.
And he got away with it.
He did. It avoided the direct copyright strikes because it was a translation, not a direct copy. It became the fastest-growing GitHub repo in history, and now he is fielding lucrative job offers from every major AI lab.
Okay, but I have to push back here for a second. Jin is brilliant, sure, but is his massive ROI actually replicable for you or me or the average enterprise user, or are we just looking at incredible survivorship bias here?
Okay, fair point.
We see the one guy who turned a massive server bill into a career, and it provides cover for a massive industry-wide bubble of completely wasted compute.
That is the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? For an enterprise, the math is brutally simple. The revenue generated by the AI's efficiency has to outpace the cost of the tokens.
And right now, the math is starting to break.
Big time. We are seeing companies whose monthly AI server bills are rivaling their actual human payrolls.
Which brings us to the physical bottleneck. Let's follow the chain of causality here. If developers like Jin are burning 50 billion tokens a year, and Amazon employees are faking billions more just to hit their management KPIs, all those requests have to hit a server somewhere.
Right.
The centralized cloud physically cannot absorb that fabricated demand forever. It's going to melt. So the tech giants are panicking and pushing the compute burden out of their data centers and directly onto your physical hardware.
It is a massive architectural pivot, from cloud first back to edge compute. And edge compute simply means the processing happens locally on the metal of your laptop or phone rather than traveling over the internet to a server farm.
Right.
And Google's latest Android Show event is the perfect showcase for this panic.
They just announced the Google Book. This is explicitly the successor to the Chromebook. Now think about what the Chromebook was. It was the ultimate cloud machine. It was basically a cheap plastic shell holding a web browser, and all the heavy lifting happened on Google's servers. But the Google Book, which they are building with manufacturers like Dell, HP, Lenovo, Acer, Asus, is entirely different. It is built natively to process AI locally.
They are packaging this whole initiative as Gemini Intelligence. Mindy Brooks, the VP of Product for Android, made a very specific distinction on stage. She said they are evolving Android from an operating system into an intelligence system.
I want to break down what that actually means, because it sounds like marketing jargon, but the mechanics are totally different.
Yeah, they are.
If you download a third-party AI app, it sits on top of your system. It has to ask permission to look at your screen or use your microphone. But an intelligence system is baked into the foundation.
Right into the metal.
Exactly. The features they showed off reflect this. They have this magic pointer AI cursor that fundamentally understands the context of whatever is on your screen without you having to highlight or copy-paste it.
And then there's Rambler, which really highlights the advantage of native integration. Rambler is a dictation tool built directly into the Gboard keyboard. As you speak, it automatically processes the audio locally and strips out filler words, the ums, the likes, the mid-sentence self-corrections before the text ever hits the screen.
Now that sounds exactly like Whisperflow, which is a third-party tool that went viral for doing the exact same thing recently.
It does. But because Google is building Rambler directly into the OS, Whisperflow can't compete. Rambler doesn't need to be launched. It's just the default way your keyboard works across every single app. But, as you pointed out, moving all this heavy processing to the local device requires serious hardware.
Let me give you an analogy. Imagine the cloud is a massive central cafeteria in an office building. Everyone goes there to get their food. But suddenly the cafeteria is so overcrowded that people are passing out in line. So management decides on a new strategy: edge compute. They are going to put a high-powered microwave in every single employee's cubicle so everyone can cook their own food locally. The problem is, putting a microwave on every desk blows the building's electrical fuse.
Yes. And to upgrade the fuse, the cost falls on the employee. You cannot run agentic AI locally on a machine with bare-bones memory. The AI model needs massive amounts of RAM just to sit open and be ready.
And we are seeing the severe strain of that in the supply chain right now. Look at motherboard sales.
Oh, it's brutal.
ASUS is projecting a massive 30% collapse in motherboard sales.
Yeah.
They're dropping from 15 million units down to 10 million.
And why is that happening? It's because of soaring DDR5 RAM prices.
Right.
The AI data centers are just hoarding all the memory. They're vacuuming up the global supply of DDR5, which makes it prohibitively expensive for regular consumers to build or upgrade their local machines.
Which is exactly why Apple just quietly killed the $599 base model of the Mac Mini. That used to be the entry-level desktop for students or casual users. It had 8 gigabytes of RAM.
Right.
But the new starting price is $799 because the new baseline is 16 gigabytes. Tim Cook explicitly addressed this on Apple's recent earnings call. He blamed the fact that demand for the Mac Mini and Mac Studio has completely outpaced supply. Why? Because users specifically want machines capable of running these massive AI workloads locally. The hardware floor has been permanently raised.
So to escape the congestion of the cloud, you're forced to buy more expensive computers.
Yeah.
But you cannot escape the physics of compute. Whether the AI is processing in an Amazon server farm or on the desk in your home office, it requires a staggering amount of power.
This is where we hit the macroeconomic reality check, because the energy consumption of this industry is no longer just a tech problem. It is bleeding directly into the physical economy. The Bureau of Labor Statistics just released the new U.S. inflation print, and it is grim.
Very grim.
Inflation hit 3.8% annually. That is a sharp jump from 3.3% in March, and it's the highest reading we've seen since May of 2023.
And when you pop the hood on that 3.8% number, the underlying mechanism is terrifying. That inflation spike wasn't driven by the cost of cars or apparel. It was driven by a massive 17.9% increase in energy costs.
Let's explain how this actually happens.
Yeah.
When you scale up these AI data centers, they don't just use power like a neighborhood uses power. They draw gigawatts of electricity constantly.
Yeah.
They require massive industrial liquid cooling systems just to keep the servers from literally melting. This raises the baseline load on the entire regional power grid. And when the grid needs to upgrade its infrastructure to handle that load, the utility companies pass that cost on to the consumer.
Right. And it leads to this incredibly dark irony. The tech industry has spent the last decade promising that their software will make humanity infinitely more quote-unquote efficient and drive costs down to zero. But instead, their massive, energy-hungry physical infrastructure is literally jacking up the power bill for the entire country. The cost to run your refrigerator, the cost for a grocery store to keep its freezers cold, the cost to run your air conditioning this summer, it's all going up to feed the data centers.
And this 3.8% inflation print effectively kills any hope the market had for summer interest rate cuts from the Federal Reserve.
Which means the cost of borrowing money stays high. And when a company's compute bill skyrockets and the macro borrowing environment gets tighter, they have to find the cash somewhere. This is the human toll of the AI boom. Enter LinkedIn.
The Microsoft-owned platform just announced they are firing about 5% of their workforce, which is roughly 875 people.
Right.
The corporate memo used that classic sanitized HR language we all know. They said they need to reinvent how they work and build agile teams.
Let's translate agile teams. What that actually means is our server bills are eating our margins, so we are firing human beings to pay for the compute.
Oh.
They are cutting human salaries so they can afford the electricity required to stay competitive in the AI arms race. It is the physical economy, meaning human jobs, groceries, and basic utility bills, literally stalling out to feed the digital one.
So if the terrestrial power grids on Earth are tapped out, and energy prices are spiking nearly 18%, and human capital is being slashed just to keep the lights on, where do the tech giants go from here? Because they can't stop training bigger models.
The answer is almost comical.
Yeah.
They are looking for an off-planet escape hatch. They are literally looking at orbit.
The logistics of this sound like a sci-fi novel, but the negotiations are happening right now. Google is reportedly circling SpaceX for a rocket launch deal to support something called Project Suncatcher.
Yes.
This is an initiative to put prototype AI data centers into orbit by 2027. Anthropic is also finalizing a compute deal with SpaceX, stating they want multiple gigawatts of orbital capacity.
If you think about the physical constraints we just discussed, space actually makes perfect sense.
Mm.
What are the two biggest problems for a data center? Power and cooling. In orbit, solar power is completely unfiltered by an atmosphere, meaning you have abundant energy. And space is naturally near absolute zero, which completely solves the cooling constraint without needing millions of gallons of fresh water.
Plus, Google already owns a 6.1% stake in SpaceX, so they get prioritized launch capacity. And for SpaceX, who is currently gearing up for a massive IPO and just filed to launch up to 1 million satellites, having orbital compute customers validates their entire pitch to Wall Street.
Though we should note, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, recently threw cold water on this idea. At an event in New Delhi, he called the concept of orbital compute ridiculous for this decade, claiming the latency issues alone mean it won't matter at scale until the 2030s.
Which is a bold claim, betting against a combined Google and Elon Musk moonshot. But Altman has his own terrestrial problems to worry about right now, because while Google is looking to the stars, the actual physical supply chain of the world is being carved up here on Earth. Let's look at the Trump-Xi summit currently happening in China.
To understand the global hardware squeeze, we have to look at who is in the room at this summit. And just to be completely clear, we are not taking any political sides here.
Right. Completely impartial.
We are strictly looking at the business implications of this meeting. The stated goals are massive, involving global trade deals, tariffs, and resolving geopolitical conflicts in Ukraine and Iran.
But look at the guest list of U.S. business leaders who accompany the delegation to meet Xi Jinping. It is a who's who of physical infrastructure. You have Elon Musk representing Tesla and SpaceX. You have Tim Cook from Apple, Jensen Huang from NVIDIA. You have the heads of Boeing, Goldman Sachs, BlackRock.
These are the hardware guys. The people who manufacture physical goods, who rely on complex global supply chains and who need to secure access to raw materials and rare earth metals, they are sitting at the table securing their futures.
But who is completely missing from that list? The software guys, the superintelligence guys. Sam Altman from OpenAI, Demis Hassabis from Google DeepMind, Dario Amodei from Anthropic. They are entirely absent from the highest levels of global diplomacy.
It highlights a fascinating disconnect. We are constantly told that AI is the most critical, world-altering technology on Earth. Yet the leaders of those specific labs are not the ones in the room negotiating the global trade agreements that will actually supply the steel, the silicon, and the power grid transformers they need to build their utopia.
So why isn't Sam Altman in China dealing with global superpowers?
Because he is trapped in a federal courtroom in Oakland. We are currently watching the Altman mega trial unfold, and this trial is entirely about the desperate fight for the financial structure required to pay for all of this hardware and energy.
The lawsuit, brought by Elon Musk, essentially accuses Altman, OpenAI, and Microsoft of betraying OpenAI's original founding mission. Musk's core claim is that they effectively stole a charity. They took a nonprofit research lab and turned it into a massive, closed-source, for-profit enterprise.
Altman took the stand yesterday, and his defense cuts right to the heart of everything we've talked about today. He argued that the nonprofit structure was mathematically impossible to maintain.
Yeah. He testified that the sheer incomprehensible scale of capital required to develop safe frontier AI simply cannot exist within a charity. You cannot raise hundreds of billions of dollars from donors to build gigawatt data centers and orbital servers. You need the traditional capital markets.
You can see the tension. A nonprofit is fundamentally constrained in how much capital it can raise and deploy. Musk is painting himself as the defender of pure open-source AI safety, insulated from corporate greed. But Altman countered on the stand, testifying that in the early days, Musk wanted a controlling stake in OpenAI, or he wanted to merge it into Tesla. And he even wanted that control to pass down to his children.
The hypocrisy is incredibly thick on both sides of the aisle, but Musk's lawyers unleashed a brutal cross-examination against Altman. They brought in devastating testimonies from former OpenAI leaders like Mira Murati and Ilya Sutskever, and they hammered Altman on his massive tangled web of conflicts of interest.
Because as OpenAI expands its physical footprint, it is doing business with companies that Altman personally has a financial stake in.
Right.
They process payments with Stripe, they explore custom chips with Cerebras, and incredibly, they are negotiating massive power agreements with Helion, a nuclear fusion energy startup where Altman was recently the board chair.
I am so glad you brought up Helion, because this brings the entire autopsy full circle. Altman needs Helion's experimental fusion energy to eventually power the massive data centers that are currently straining the grid and jacking up the U.S. inflation rate to 3.8%.
Yes.
So I have to ask you, Altman sat on that witness stand and said, "I believe I am an honest and trustworthy business person, but when you look at the sheer amount of money flowing into AI, the grid strain, the orbital rocket launches, the tangled web of personal investments, does the concept of AI governance even exist anymore? Is it just a polite fiction, a PR shield covering up a planetary-scale resource grab?"
That is the core anxiety underlying this entire narrative. Neither side in that Oakland courtroom is offering a clean, reassuring story about who is protecting humanity's interests. If the fundamental underlying requirement for your product to even exist is infinite capital and infinite energy, then careful governance quickly takes a backseat to brute force survival and scale.
So let's tie this whole deep dive together. The software is no longer weightless. It is dragging the physical world behind it. We are living in a moment where a massive company like Amazon is literally forcing its employees to fake their AI usage just to hit a toxic management metric.
Right.
That fake usage, driven by agentic background loops, burns billions of tokens. Burning those tokens requires massive amounts of physical hardware and cloud compute. Because the cloud is choking, tech companies are forcing you to buy more expensive local hardware.
And hoarding the RAM.
Exactly. Meanwhile, all those cloud data centers are straining the power grid, which drives your national energy inflation up by nearly 18%. And because the energy and server bills are so impossibly high, companies like LinkedIn are forced to fire human beings just to keep the lights on.
It is a flawless, if completely terrifying, chain of cause and effect.
It really is. So I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on today. Think back to developer Sigrid Jin at the very beginning of our deep dive. He told everyone that if they want to survive the future economy, they need to voluntarily spend as much on AI tokens as they do on their rent. But if every company mandates it and every developer actually does it, what happens to our physical economy when the utility bill for our artificial intelligence actually bankrupts the real world we live in?
That is a collision we are all going to feel.
We'll see you next time. Keep questioning the scoreboard.
And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads, we build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit jamgamind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building.